Hello, welcome to this week's video. Because of the election, I figure I can start wearing red hats again. This is one of my favorite hats. This is my University of Oklahoma hat. I got from the college, so I can't wear it because I actually have worn it in the last 4 years, and I actually had an incident because they thought it was a different hat. But the other reason why I'm wearing the hat is, guys, it's the first time you guys are gonna see it. Finally got rid of my quarantine hair. So this is what I kind of normally look like. In fact, I kind of dress like I normally dress when I'm teaching in front of students in a classroom, because I usually wear a t-shirt and a blazer and, usually khakis, some rare occasion jeans. That's the kind of professor I am. Anyways, this week's video is about persuasion and the persuasion topics. Because I know about how much you guys watch these videos and so forth, I want to say a few things before I get into the persuasion part. First things first, I want to identify the fact that I do know how much you guys watch these videos. I can see the analytics on YouTube. I can see how much you comment in the discussion threads. And the fact of the matter is, it's a little bit disappointing. If you're having a hard time during this semester with following along with materials, preparing for your speech, a lot of that content was in these videos that were created for when you were going along in the semester. This was created, the part of your lecture was going to be on your own time. You could do it whenever you want, and it seems like quite a few of you have either put it off or not done it at all. And these are easy participation points. Get caught up, because the participation points, again, very easy, and again, very important to what we're learning and for your class. And some of the tips I have in these videos also go beyond this class. The other thing I'm going to mention, since this is probably the video you're going to watch, the most of you are going to watch in the final part of the semester, COVID-19 numbers are going up, the coronavirus numbers are going up. Looks like we're going into another peak, a third peak. Looks like the winter's going to be bad, and so, be prepared. There's no jokes, there's no hoax, and the fact of the matter is, you need to be on your game. Enough, I can't say that enough. Alright. Maybe I share a story during our last class. Okay, so our last section of this semester is persuasion and what it is. And I've already talked about it a little bit. Persuasion, you have your entertainment, your informative, and your persuasive speech, and your general purposes: to entertain, to inform, and to persuade. Persuasion is getting someone to do something. Either have a new thought in their head, a new belief, a new concept, or whatever, where they believe in something new. Not just being informative, but you want them to walk away with a certain thought, an opinion. So it's not just saying this is occurring, but this is occurring because of this. This is occurring, this needs to be rectified. And the other thing is you telling them to do something. That is what persuasion is. The example of going out with your friends. When you go out with your friends and you tell them all the different things you want to do, what you do is the informative part, which is you tell them all the different places you can possibly eat. The persuasive part is when you tell them what to, where to eat, where you want to go, what movie you want to see. That is what the persuasive is. You've done it already. You know what persuasive is. It's letting your parents, when you're a teenager, letting your parents know what you could be doing the weekend. And then the persuasion, that's informative. Persuasion part is telling them, hey, can I go to this party? Can I go borrow the car? Can I have $5? Can I have 10 bucks? Okay, maybe back in my day, 20 bucks or whatever. All right, that is the persuasive. All right, so keep that in mind. That is, you already know what persuasive is. I mean, think about the nonverbals. This is usually my usual background. More from a distance, but this is my background that you guys see all the time in my videos, and what most people see. They see my degrees, which is I'm persuading folks who see this a bunch of junk here, that I have an education. I had the 2 master's degree and a BA. And then over here, I have, this is my hardcover. Just imagine someone visiting you for the first time and they see where you live. So if someone comes to my place and see it for the first time, my persuasion is I'm trying to convince them I'm, I don't know, well-rounded. I have my military stuff visible, firefighting stuff, travel things, my love of science, my political stuff is up here. A lot of different things is indicated by what is presented non-verbally. That's persuasion. You know, when you get dressed up to go somewhere to try and impress somebody. And that leads into what the best example of what persuasion is. If you take communication studies, one of the subjects is interpersonal. And whenever you take an interpersonal course, you've got to understand one thing. The root of all interpersonal, it goes back to the first interpersonal communication, which is mating. It's finding a mate, convincing someone to, you know, do the deed. Way back in caveman times, that was the first interpersonal. Beware when you take an interpersonal class, because I once had an interpersonal lecture with a professor who was an older gentleman, not the best look when he said interpersonal is all about sex. Did not go well. But he was correct, and you're going to find throughout this thing the finding somebody else, the whole coupling up thing. That is the crux. That is the core of persuasion. Trying to convince somebody to do something as dramatic as being with you or being with you for the rest of their lives. That is the quintessential best example of what persuasion is. When you completely change someone's life by a convincing argument that you make. Persuasion. And you're gonna hear this whole persuasion mating thing throughout this thing. Alright. So what do you need to know? Well, what you need to know for persuasion is you already know it. You've already done it. Just think about the speech patterns that we covered. And then you had choices. I told you the 2 that are the most used for persuasion speeches. The other ones can do it too. But cause and effect and problem solution are the 2 most frequent speech patterns for persuasion, or persuasion choice, especially when you're starting out in speaking. Because cause and effect, for example, you're showing the causes and you're doing the effect, saying this is because of this, and that could be informative. If you're explaining why there is a drop in the, you know, a certain fish population because of irrigation stuff, that's just informative. But when you are saying that the environment is being killed by laws and practices passed in the state, then it becomes persuasive. When you put that judgmental language, that is becoming persuasive. So your speech patterns really, the 2 that puts it there are, again, cause and effect and problem solution. The one that you have to do for your last speech, you don't get a choice, is problem solution. Just like cause and effect, first main point is problem, second main point is problem, and the last one is solution. You're convincing your audience that there is a problem and you have the solution. You want them to have the solution. Going back to the dating example, when you go and convince somebody to go out with you, when you, that first step in the art of dating, I was going to say seduction, but that's creepy. But of dating, you have to convince someone to go out with you. And so you say the problem is they don't have anything to do on Friday night. The problem is that there's so many different things that are out there, and you have the solution. You have the winning ticket to having the best time on Friday night with the person you're trying to ask out. That is the core of problem solution right there. The other thing is you already done 2 speeches on informative. The first one you can't really make into persuasive unless you're trying to convince them to go along with your path. But just think about the informative you made. If you did a speech about baking a cake, how to bake a cake, you turn it in persuasive saying, I make the best cake there is. That is a persuasion. Same thing if you're doing an informative on the cartels, one of the banned speeches. This is the way we go after the cartels. This is how we go after them, or this is how we incorporate them into our society, by legalizing drugs. That's all persuasion. Changing a couple words or a couple things, or most importantly, your thesis, takes something that is informative and makes it into persuasive. Instead of telling your friends these are all the different food options, you tell them where the food options and you know the best one. Persuasive. That is persuasive. So if you already have done this stuff, that's what you need to know. You're already there. The only thing that are added to the speech is that you need to have another reference, and that you need to do the speech pattern problem solution. So you need to have a solution. That's the next video. Just to let you know, that's next week's video. But there's a general thing. This goes into the what you're going to get a question on in your final. And this next part is some of the most important things to know about persuasion. There's these 3 words that are in your book, and just one of them has already been talked about with when we were talking about ethical speech, and that is ethos, logos, pathos. These words are fundamental to public speaking and to just communication in general. These are old. I always get them confused. These old words are root words for words that you already know. That's what I'm trying to give into. To remember that these are root words for words you already know. So, for example, when you think of ethos, what word do you already know is in your book? That means ethos, and that's ethics. What kind of ethics you have, what kind of morality you have, what kind of belief system that you have, credibility you have. Logos, just think about words that sound like logos. And that's logic. It's a root word for logic. Logical deduction, your concept, your reasoning. This is all logos. And the last one, the one that's different than what it means in the sense of root words, but if you just remember this, is pathos. What word sounds like pathos? And you think of path. And if you remember the emotional path you take as a speaker, then you will remember that, because that's what it is. Pathos is the motivation, the emotional, in this case, persuasion that you're trying to convey to your audience or the person you're speaking to. Ethos, logos, pathos is a fundamental of public speaking, because if you have all these, if you're an ethical speaker, you have sound logic, and the emotional path you take is right in the right moment, then your persuasion should not be knocked out of the park. And the reason why I bring this up is because the one thing that you need to know about persuasion, i.e. a testable question. Persuasion is the most dangerous form of speech there is. Out of all the speeches that you hear about or know about, and to entertain, to inform, persuasion is the most dangerous. Because, like I said, if you have ethos, logos, and pathos, you're good to go as a public speaker. You're an ethical speaker. You are a persuasive speaker. But the unfortunate thing is, there have been successful speakers. And just think about our own politics. Think about what you've heard in the world so far from leaders. There has been leaders that have missing one of those 3. They didn't have the ethics, or they didn't have the logos. But most of the time, all those unethical speakers, all those problematic speakers had some kind of pathos. And what I mean by that is, just think about the most dangerous persuasive speaker of all time. The person is considered very persuasive and the most dangerous persuasive speaker of all time. And we're talking no religious implications, no nothing like that. We're talking historical record, so there's no debate. So I don't want to say, oh, that would be the snake. No, I don't want that kind of. I'm talking in history, our history, and that is Hitler. And I'm not one to bring up him that easily. But just think about it. He had no ethics, obviously, because of the horrible things he did. He had no logic, because he waged war on 3 different fronts. And he was essentially one country. Okay, you can say 2, 2.5. But essentially, no logic, and his decision making was horrible with the bad ethics. But he had emotional appeal. He had the pathos. Pathos doesn't have to be right or wrong. It's just whatever emotional appeal you make. So I hate to use the example of Hitler, but he had no ethics, he had no logic, but he had an emotional appeal that resonated at that time. And it did so in a very destructive, horrible way. And it's important to remember that with your public speaking, not just for this class, but for every thing you do in the future. And when you hear a politician or somebody trying to convince you of something, do they have the ethics, the ethos? Do they have the logic, the logos? And what kind of path are they trying to take you on? Because if it's a path of self-destruction or destruction of other people, then you know that those other ones, oops, see what I did there? Messes you up. It F's you over. Alright, so, see, I got your attention. Alright, so, ethos, pathos, logos, and persuasion, right? Ethos, logos, pathos. And the most important thing to remember is persuasion is the most dangerous form of speech. And that the instructor flipped you off. It was a nonverbal way for you to remember when someone only has one, they F you over. Alright, so the topic is pretty easy. Today's discussion participation is pretty easy because it's down there and you know what it is. It's selecting your topic. This speech is, because of the situation we find ourselves in, is only a 5-minute speech. So yay, 5 minutes. But you do need to have another reference. 3 is the minimum, 5 is highly recommended. You need to have problem solution, just like before. You're going to be on camera. The audience will be on camera. Let's see what else is there that's new. Problem solution, speech pattern, and the topic has to be persuasive, and the topic has to be relevant to an issue, world or U.S. or an event, a current event type situation. Know how to bake a cake, or you should bake a cake. It's stuff that is topical in our society. We should do this. We need to do that. It could be local, state, federal, global. Certain topics are banned. You can go down and see the topics that are banned. Just like before, we don't debate facts, but certain things are debatable. We don't debate things that can't be changed, meaning or don't need to be changed. Your topic has to be, so for example, gay marriage. If you're against gay marriage, you can obviously do a persuasive speech about changing the law. But if you're for gay marriage, it's legal. Same thing with marijuana. You can talk about, most instructors ban that speech. If you're against marijuana, you can obviously speak about it. But if you're for marijuana, it's legal in the state of California. And by the way, it's growing in legality in the United States. So there's really no persuasion there except for a federal thing. So anything where you're trying to ask to change something that's already been done, but you can change the scope of it. So for example, if you're for gay marriage, you can say, okay, well, I want the federal government to push gay marriage legalization in the world. The United States supports countries that support gay citizens. They're gay citizens. Stuff like that. That is something that you could debate. Some ones that are usually banned, like abortion is usually banned in these types of classes. I don't ban that speech. You could be for or against it, but you have to be respectful. I had a student who tried to do that speech. who was against abortion, and she called people against abortion baby killers. I do have her permission to say this, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because that can lose you points. If you are insulting towards your opposition, that is bad. All right? And if you talk about an issue that is sensitive in nature, just like you're informative, you had to be respectful. But you also have to understand that some of these issues, when you talk about it, you might say, okay, I'm talking about this, but it sounds like, the example is I had a student who talked about a certain kind of medical procedure, but then proceeded to talk excessively about this one part of the procedure, and it sounded like a whole bunch of references about penises. So be mindful of what you're trying to advocate for or against, because the language you use can be off-putting. And we don't have any visual, we don't have a PowerPoint because we're doing the Zoom thing, unless you want to do that special type situation that we talked about in the last speech. But be mindful of the visuals that you do present. And the most important thing is, do not read off your speech. Do not write out your speech. This is extemporaneous speaking. Alright, use your outline. Okay, enough of that. Choose a topic. By the way, same ban as before. Students can only one topic per class, but you must identify if you're for or against it, and the students can have the same topic as long as one person's for and one person's against. Debate is the only way that's a possibility. And I've allowed that, and if students go head to head in their speaking, I do give them bonus points. So keep that in mind. Look down in the thread, see who's taking what, and maybe you can find someone to debate. Well, not a regular debate. Alright, choose your topics.